There is a thought many bisexual people have had, and immediately felt guilty for having. What if I could be happier with someone else? Not because they don't love the person they're with. Not because the relationship is secretly failing, but because attraction doesn't always disappear when commitment begins. And when you can experience attraction in more than one direction, your brain can become dangerously good at comparison. You notice the stranger, the coworker, the person on your screen, the person who looks completely different from your partner. And suddenly, a completely ordinary moment becomes psychological evidence. Why did I notice them? Why did I feel that? Would I feel this way if I were really satisfied? Do I want something my relationship isn't giving me? And then comes the question nobody wants to admit. What if I'm choosing the wrong life? That question can become addictive, because certainty feels impossible when your brain keeps generating alternatives. Every attractive person becomes another hypothetical. Every crush becomes a test. Every fantasy becomes something you analyze. And eventually, you're no longer simply experiencing attraction. You're auditing it. You start measuring intensity. Who gives me stronger butterflies? Who makes me more curious? Who do I think about more? Who feels more exciting? Who feels safer? Who would I miss more? The problem is that attraction was never designed to answer those questions objectively. But the brain hates ambiguity, so it keeps collecting data. And this is where something strange happens. The more you analyze your attraction, the less naturally you experience it. You turn feelings into evidence. A feeling happens. You investigate it. You investigate the investigation. And then you wonder why you don't feel spontaneous anymore. This is one of the strangest psychological traps bisexual people can fall into. Not uncertainty about whether attraction exists, but uncertainty about what every individual attraction means. Because attraction can be situational, can be emotional, can be physical, can be novelty, can be fantasy, can be chemistry, can simply be your brain noticing someone attractive. But when you're already afraid of making the wrong romantic decision, none of those explanations feel safe enough. So your mind keeps digging, and modern dating culture gives it endless material. Dating apps are essentially comparison machines. You swipe through hundreds of faces, hundreds of personalities, hundreds of imaginary possibilities. And every profile quietly communicates the same message. There might be someone better. That idea doesn't need to be spoken. The interface already says it. Keep looking, keep comparing, keep optimizing. And eventually that mindset can leak into relationships. You don't just ask whether you're happy. You ask whether you could be happier. That's a completely different question. Because am I happy? Has an answer. Could I be happier? Has no ending. There will always be someone more attractive, someone more exciting, someone more emotionally intense, someone who shares more of your interests, someone who gives you a different kind of chemistry, someone who activates a part of you your current partner doesn't. And this is where bisexuality can collide with modern optimization culture in a particularly complicated way. Because having the capacity for attraction across genders can make the imagined alternatives feel especially vivid. Not necessarily because you want to leave, because your brain knows there are forms of attraction you haven't experienced in your current relationship. And the existence of an unexplored possibility can feel strangely powerful. The unknown has no flaws. Fantasy doesn't snore. Fantasy doesn't disappoint you. Fantasy doesn't misunderstand your texts. Fantasy doesn't have bad days. Fantasy doesn't ask you to compromise. Fantasy only gives you possibility. and possibility can become more intoxicating than reality. That's when attraction starts becoming emotional escape. Not because the relationship is terrible. Sometimes because real intimacy has become ordinary. And ordinary intimacy cannot compete with imaginary intensity. The person you've built a life with becomes familiar. The stranger becomes mysterious. Your partner has history. The stranger has potential. And potential is psychologically unfair. Because you compare reality against something that has never been tested by reality. That changes people. Quietly. You can begin craving uncertainty while calling it chemistry. You can mistake novelty for compatibility. You can mistake anxiety for desire. You can mistake emotional distance for excitement. And then you wonder why stable relationships sometimes feel strangely less intense. Because your nervous system has learned to associate uncertainty with emotional stimulation. This is where the hidden thought becomes darker. What if commitment means losing access to parts of myself? That fear doesn't always mean you want multiple relationships. Sometimes it means you're afraid that choosing one person requires killing every other possibility. And psychologically, that can feel like mourning. Because every choice closes doors. Every relationship contains an invisible graveyard of lives you didn't live. The person you didn't date. The city you didn't move to. The version of yourself you didn't become. The relationship you never discovered. Most people experience this without constantly thinking about it. But when your mind is already trained to compare possibilities, those imaginary lives can become unusually loud. You start wondering about alternate versions of yourself. Who would I be with them? Would I feel different? Would I feel more masculine? More feminine? More desired? More understood? More alive? And now you're no longer comparing people. You're comparing identities. That's much deeper. Because sometimes you aren't attracted to the person as much as you're attracted to who you imagine yourself becoming around them. And that distinction can be incredibly difficult to recognize. One relationship might make you feel secure. Another fantasy might make you feel adventurous. One person might make you feel emotionally safe. Another might make you feel intensely wanted. And the brain can interpret those different emotional states as competing forms of love. But they aren't necessarily competing. They are different experiences. You can crave novelty and still value stability. You can experience attraction outside your relationship without secretly wanting to destroy it. You can notice someone beautiful without turning the moment into a referendum on your commitment. That sounds simple. But for someone who constantly monitors their attraction, it can feel almost impossible. Because eventually, even your own thoughts become suspicious. You don't trust the feeling. You interrogate it. You don't enjoy the fantasy. You analyze why you had it. You don't simply notice attraction. You ask what it reveals about you. And that is how self-surveillance begins. The mind starts watching itself watching. Until attraction becomes exhausting. You aren't living your romantic life anymore. You're conducting an investigation into it. And perhaps the most dangerous part is that analysis can create the very uncertainty you're trying to eliminate. The more questions you ask, the more possibilities you generate. The more possibilities you generate, the less certain you feel. So you ask more questions. And the cycle feeds itself. Comparison creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates analysis. Analysis creates more comparison. And eventually, you mistake the noise for truth. That's the hidden psychological trap. Sometimes the question isn't, who do I really want? Sometimes the question is, Why do I need to know with absolute certainty? Because love rarely gives you that. Attraction doesn't give you that. Identity doesn't give you that. Life doesn't give you that. And perhaps bisexual people are not uniquely confused by attraction. Perhaps some simply become uniquely aware of how little certainty attraction actually provides. You can love someone and notice someone else. You can be committed and still experience desire. You can be satisfied and still wonder about other possibilities. You can choose one person without becoming blind to everyone else. The existence of another possibility does not automatically invalidate the choice you've made. Because commitment isn't the disappearance of every alternative. It's the decision about which reality you are willing to actually live. And that may be the thought many bisexual people never say out loud. I don't necessarily want someone else. I'm just afraid that somewhere out there is a version of my life that feels different enough to make me question this one. That fear can follow you for years. Through relationships. Through breakups. Through dating apps. Through crushes. Through fantasies. Through every person who makes you wonder, what if? But eventually you have to confront something uncomfortable. There will always be another possibility, another person, another fantasy, another version of your life. The brain can spend forever comparing them. Or you can finally recognize the difference between having options and needing to chase every option. Because attraction is not a command. A thought is not a decision. A fantasy is not a betrayal. And uncertainty is not proof that something is wrong. Sometimes the most exhausting relationship isn't the one you're in. It's the one happening inside your head, between the life you're living and every life you keep imagining instead.